Do you have any big plans for October?
Working, yes.
Working, yeah, me too. Funny enough, I did a little research on the topic I brought in today, and I found out that October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Oh, wow. That's very exciting.
Is it?
I don't know.
Are you excited about Cybersecurity Awareness Month?
I will make a confession. I actually have gotten really into cybersecurity, policy, and privacy in the last few years. I actually very passionate about the topic, but I do understand that it's not the sexiest one.
Yeah, it's not. It really isn't. But like this one is for all the IT teams and the technology teams out there. You know, I think as we try to race towards embedding AI technology, they tend to be a little bit of a bottleneck, but it's because they're worried about security of their data. And it's because they have to put the right safeguards in place. And that is important.
Okay, so let's back up a minute. We're talking about security data for what?
So I was listening to the Big Technology podcast, and they had this gentleman called Juan Kostica on there. He's one of the founders of Wiz. Wiz is a cybersecurity company. It's the biggest ever acquisition that Google has ever made, which is pretty big, right? And he's a cybersecurity expert. And what he was on there talking about was that basically there's a bomb waiting to go off. There are so many security gaps inside of AI that it's crazy. And it's because people are moving so fast and they're building so fast and they're leaving a lot of things unbuttoned up. And he sort of points to three areas. One is the technology that it's built on, the chips, the software that run it, the data centers. Those are places of vulnerability. But that's not new, right? That has always been a place of vulnerability for bad actors. Another is the cloud. Now you're getting a little bit more, right? Because people are just dumping all this data into the cloud because AI does what? It gobbles up a bunch of data, right?
Yeah, and even before we talk about AI, if you remember, I mean, what is time anymore? But I remember maybe 2 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, there was this massive iCloud hack with big consequences for celebrities in which basically, you know, a lot of us started understanding a lot about the importance of good security practices. So I feel, yeah, like you said, that's always been there, these issues with security, but is there anything else we should be mindful of?
Well, the third thing is vibe coding. Now, vibe coding, little definition up here, is when you basically have an idea for something that you want to build and you have AI create the code for you. And you know what? Maybe you fix a couple bugs. Well, it fixes it for you. And then you put it out there and it works and you have software and you have an app and it's good to go, right? Well, there is a problem though, because
Surprise, surprise.
if you are not monitoring your code, and especially if you're collecting data from people, credit card information, email addresses, any little bits of data you might be collecting along the way, and your app was vibe coded and it doesn't have the right security protocols in place, you basically are opening yourself up to just being hacked, like easier than traditional software. And there are cases of people who have vibe coded apps and been hacked the next day.
My first thought that is popping out right now is like, isn't the whole thing about vibe coding that you don't need to code? How are you gonna debug something if you don't understand it? Like, that's not computing in my brain. I don't know.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And I think we are so driven towards producing something new, both individually with these tools at our fingertips and at the enterprise level, because they can add AI to this and that and gain efficiency this way and that way. Everyone is so eager to like play. And I think that is part of human nature, that we're leaving the back door open for bad actors to come in and mess with our stuff.
All right, and you got my curiosity now. We have a situation which, let's say, myself, I could not know a single thing about coding. It feels super overwhelming. So I'm sort of like, I feel the target audience, you know, technologically inclined person, you know, and what I think about is, yeah, I could maybe vibe code some simple app. But as we were saying, right, if it comes to debugging, you might as well ask me to write a book in Korean because I will fail at both. Because again, I don't think anyone's vibe coding Microsoft Office. Hopefully not. We do know some, like, what's a common use case for vibe coding that it's much more realistic to someone that is listening or watching this, for example?
Yeah, so I think, you know, a lot of people are out there making toys right now little GPTs or little applets that can do a certain very specific task. And I don't know if there's such a big problem with that unless you're collecting data and you're opening up users to any security breach. Then it's, if your app gets hacked and broken apart, you just build a new one, right? But I think, there's people who are using vibe coding to build their websites, to build apps that actually have like a point of sale or a data collection aspect. And that is where kind of the rubber meets the road. And I think one of the things that I learned from this podcast, which I think is a rule of thumb, though again, I am not well versed in cybersecurity, but it's what happens when you get a breach. If you don't know, then you are vulnerable, right? So if there's a breach at poor Sony, but Sony, do you remember the Sony breach?
Yeah.
They have a technical team in place. There's a CTO who gets called. There's a plan of action. They find the vulnerability where the bad actor got in, and then they measure the response. They're a real organization. But I think because there is this like democratization of coding and anyone and everyone can build everything, that's a dream scenario. But when something goes wrong, who do you call? And I think like it's something that has come up too when you base too much of your business on ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is not a service business. You can't like call the hotline and be like, ChatGPT broke, and like my whole company is stopped down for 4 hours.
Well, the good news about that, at least for the people that is monetizing this situation, that it's a very real situation, right? It's like it's gotten work for a lot of people that actually knows how to code. If you go to Fiverr, or I think Upwork is the other page, you'll find people offering service to debug vibe-coded apps, to check out the security. So in a way, that's AI creating new jobs.
Hey!
Silver lining. We got a silver lining. Yeah.
So I think my question for you is, if all of AI went down tomorrow, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic Claude, everything just sort of went dark. There was some virus. What would be your biggest concern?
Well, first of all, LinkedIn post incoming. First of all, that would be priority number one, talking about it. Number two, I would call you so we can do a special episode, live stream, so we can get those views.
Would our phones work?
That's a great question. Maybe not. So in that case, I would just go live from the trenches. But seriously, I would be like, honestly, I would just try to think AI, what from my personal data could be affected. So I would probably put if the internet doesn't work, I think we're cooked. But I go to, put a social, is it like a credit freeze?
Possibly.
Yeah, well, let's hope it doesn't go down. Luckily, all the people in tech know what they're doing and they have a very clear plan. So folks, nothing to worry about.
Okay, now here's the other question I have for you and this is a little sci-fi, but just go with me. So right now we're talking about the software that runs businesses, right? Like the credit system or the cell phone company or whatever. We are bridging into a world where also it runs transportation. Like, have you taken a Waymo?
I actually took a Waymo today to come here and I love it.
Okay.
I do have to say I've had a relationship with them in the past, so for full disclosure. But again, thanks to that, I tried the service and actually was pretty afraid the first time. Yeah. And then I kind of love it, to be honest.
So if you believed there was a potential for your Waymo to be hacked, would you still get into it?
Many times I ask myself the question. I would love to say no, because I'm a smart person that can make smart decisions, which is what my mom and ChatGPT say. But probably it's not a good idea, right? If it was vibe coded, definitely. And again, not mentioning any brands. I'd say if tomorrow they say like, we vibe coded this car, I'll walk. Thank you.
Yeah. It really is a risk reward balance that you have to, every time you go on the internet and like put in your credit card information or like log in somewhere, it's a risk reward balance. And I think it's just the world we live in. We all have to make those decisions for ourselves. The more we're aware of like more vulnerable software apps can be, the better decisions I think we can make.
Yeah. And speaking of decisions, speaking of bad actors, and speaking of things that might not be as sci-fi as vibe-coded cards, I want to talk about something a lot more boring, but I think all of us have noticed in our phones that we are getting more and more of these messages with someone, like text messages with someone that got the wrong number, but then gets chatty. And I think when we talk about use cases for AI, that's something that has been growing a lot, which is AI tools like ChatGPT being leveraged by hackers to customize. Again, we're talking about pure human ingenuity, right? Like basically this use case for AI is, in the words of ChatGPT, it loves saying supercharge. So I will say it's supercharging social engineering, right? From people that could give away they were scamming because maybe they didn't have the best command of grammar. Now with ChatGPT, you can create very believable and customized conversations, right? At least, I mean, I see it on my text messages, I see it on my email. Again, some of that information is publicly available, so I think I'm more exposed than the normal person. But in conversations, I feel like this is really blowing up.
Let me just interrupt you real quick because I like what you're saying about social engineering. And what is so interesting about these scams is that they prey on our psychological vulnerabilities. Like for some reason, most of the ones that I get are like, hi, I'm a recruiter from such and such, and I have this great job for you, right? Because they know that I'm like a business person and looking for business, right?
It's always a recruiter.
But then also, like, sometimes I accidentally probably get a sexy person that wants to say hello to me, right? Ooh. But I think, one of the misconceptions about these internet scams that I find so fascinating is that we picture sort of coder guys in their basement scamming people for fun. And it's actually businesses. There are businesses whose business is to scam people for money. And they are, just like any other business, leveraging the tools at their disposal, like you said, ChatGPT or whatever sort of like random text generator app that they have to sound in the lexicon and language of their target audience. I mean, it's getting more and more sophisticated.
It's getting more and more sophisticated, but I have a question for you then, which is, could we use AI in some way? And I'm not talking like some technology. I'm just talking like everyday people that have a ChatGPT account. Maybe they pay for Midjourney, whatever. But is there any way that you think we could use AI to sort of fight back against these AI power scams?
Well, it's interesting because that is like the company I was mentioning. That was the Google acquisition. That's what they do. So they use like AI to find the vulnerabilities, to proactively seek out the vulnerabilities and then have them fix them. Because there's like this ratio problem, right? The owner of a software, whatever, needs to constantly be looking for vulnerabilities, whereas the hacker only needs to find one door in and then they're in, right? And so I do think that, yes, companies could use this technology to constantly be scraping and looking and finding the patterns that are faulty in the code where a hacker could break in. I'm talking about that like I know what I'm talking about. I have no idea how to hack a website. But like that is my understanding of that sort of, repetitive, constant scraping that could be going on in the background all the time that AI could provide companies to help them with cybersecurity.
All right. So, Kate, we're talking about bad actors. We're talking about vibe coding, right? And last week, we both were playing around with Sora and sharing our first impressions. So I thought, it's Cybersecurity Month. What a lovely time to bring the topic. What happens with technology? We say move fast, break things, but then what happens when the thing we're breaking is humanity?
Oh no!
Always a soft, like a light topic here to finish. Let's say,
what kind of a week are you having?
Just a regular normal week in 2025, like everybody else. But let's say, we had Meta releasing Meta AI, which is sort of like this TikTok 100% dedicated to basically AI slop. And then we have Sora
just
2.
broadly, just rejected by everybody. Fully rejected.
Full rejection. But then, because Meta releases Meta AI, OpenAI releases Sora 2 as an app that it's basically doing the same thing. Now, I kept on playing with Sora, after I got traumatized by the cat flying last week. And one thing that I realized pretty quickly, I couldn't save the videos when I was using the app on my phone. So I tried screen recording and the screen would turn black. So my brain goes like, of course, they want to avoid, fakes or this thing kind of going into the wall.
Yeah.
Then I found out it's actually because I have the $20 subscription. And if I want to download, it's $200. But again, like anyone that wants to, see what else is out there, one thing I did was I checked the source on Chrome. I think I inspected the code, whatever, and I found the MP4. So I downloaded the video. And then within a minute, I went on Google and I was like, I wonder if I can remove the watermarks. And I did find a website.
Very impressive.
Very impressive. I'm like smart. Honestly, it's not that hard. You have tutorials in YouTube as well. But again, pretty quickly, I was able to remove watermarks, both the ones that are not seen by the
and
human
the
eye.
invisible ones?
The invisible one and the visible one, right?
So explain what the watermarking is for.
The watermarking is, for example, let's say this was an AI generated image. We'll have a thing up here that said maybe had like a little drawing that it's like the Gemini logo, or we would have a Sora thing,
logo, yeah.
which also like it's consistently moving locations. I'm assuming because they don't want that blurred out.
And then in the source code, it also has a signifier in there that says this was generated by an AI app. So you can't remove it, but you were able to take out both.
Now you can remove it and literally takes a Google search saying how to remove a Sora watermark. So it's not that hard. But my question is, right, we're seeing sort of like this race to release these apps. And we know that the guardrails, which is what we have said, is a thing that keeps AI from telling you how to build a bomb or like creating deepfakes. We know those guardrails do not work. So first of all, I would say, is this a race to the bottom just to get eyes?
I think so. Yeah, that's how I would frame it. I mean, it's hard to understand what the purpose of creating an entire social media platform of scrolling Slop is. It's hard to understand. Now, we're very early days, and the Slop is sloppy. Slopperific. And mostly this app is being used right now to troll OpenAI and make fun of the platform itself. Could it evolve into something else? Possibly.
I think so.
I think so too. But it is pretty hard to like see the point right now because we already have TikTok and the behavior of TikTok or like Google Shorts or Instagram, all of those scrolling apps that have the like serotonin hit, short attention span, like can't stop doom scrolling. God, it's 12:30. I can't stop. That is just another player in that game. And I think what we do need to think about is like, what's its place within our media consumption landscape and why? Because if you like, do you pick it over TikTok or do you now just expand your bandwidth and spend more and more time scrolling up through shorts?
Okay, let's try to reverse engineer the thinking then. And you got all this experience in media, right? So I'm very interested in your opinion. Like, what do you think it's the end game here? Like, for me, it's not clear how this justifies the gigantic spending on AI. And the best thing we can do is create fake some Altman videos. But again, am I missing anything?
I think we're probably missing something, but I also feel like maybe in a sense this is just marketing because the Sora user formerly was a prosumer, right? A video professional or somebody that knew something about making videos and cared about making videos or cared about marketing or lived in like that little zone. And now it's anybody, the way that TikTok is anybody. So it kind of may be like this sort of sprinkle fertilize strategy where they just want to get more and more users of Sora. That's like something it could be. It could also be data collection because they want to see all the videos that people create and understand why and what and how. And, they're not being very upfront right now about what they're exactly doing. They gave out a few little codes for people to use it. And they're saying, we didn't know how successful it would be. Well, you knew exactly how successful it would be. You gave out a certain number of codes. So it's a little bit nonsensical at the moment.
You actually mentioned something that just kind of like lit up a bubble, right? Which is like, what if the end game, we know obviously training data, it's sort of like the new gold or oil or whatever has value these days, right? And it's like with Sora, one of the first actions you take, and again, this is me theorizing, this is not a fact, I could be proving wrong 2 weeks from now by the time this episode's live, right? But like
Right.
one of the things I had to do sort of like with Face and ID with my iPhone was sort of like,
Oh, you did it?
I'm dumb, I did it. I am dumb. I literally did it. And I was like, what have I done?
Wait a minute, so I can deep fake you doing
No,
things?
you can't. I mean, probably it will get hacked and I'm sure there will be deepfakes, but in theory, you can't. I'm like, what if the whole thing about this is like, remember Cambridge Analytica?
Yes.
Back in 2016,
Of
how
course.
you'd play that game and eventually that changed democracy as we know it. Okay, what if the whole thing is just to get more faces for training?
It could be. I mean, it very well could be. And I don't think that building a social media app anymore takes too much resources or too, I mean, I'm sorry to the folks that built this thing, but it's not the same level of undertaking as building GPT-5.
Can you vibe code it?
They surely partially vibe coded it. Surely they did. Because their whole business plan is to build AI software engineers. So like, yes. God, it's so complicated, like all the pieces and the not knowing. And I just wonder, like, we're sitting here theorizing, like, what's their grand plan and what's their strategy? Do they even friggin' have one?
Aren't they supposed to be like really smart and know everything?
Aren't we?
I mean, ChatGPT always tells me I'm bright, but now I don't know anymore.
Me either. But I don't see anything valuable right now. The one thing that was interesting was like when it started out, like the first couple of days, it had all this like SpongeBob and Pikachu and all of these sort of IP infringement things. And then all that went away. And then they retweaked the security permissions and you weren't allowed to create videos unless somebody had already given their permission to use their likeness or their IP.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's like they backtracked. Why did you start with that and then backtrack? You started with that to build buzz so people would go on there. It feels like buzz marketing.
Yeah, I think you have a point on this one that it does feel to me more like, okay, if they're releasing it, I'm releasing it too. Because you want that headline, because at the end of the day, these are all companies that are looking for investment. And while I'm sure people do their due diligence and read business plans and go through spreadsheets, we're still humans acting on emotion. And I think if I've learned anything in the last few years, is that men can be emotional too.
Oh.
Apparently, yeah, we get emotional and we make decisions based on things that are not logical. So maybe this is just humanity winning.
Well, I will also land on a silver lining note.
That's good.
Which is, look, everything that you can do inside the Sora app, you already do on TikTok, right? You're looking at things and sort of half paying attention to them and getting little dopamine hits, as we said. But the difference is that on Sora, you know that everything is synthetic. You know that everything is fake. Or in theory, you do because you know where you're at and you know what the app is for. But you don't know that it's murky waters on TikTok. You're always sort of like, is that happening or is that not happening? Do I believe this? Is this fake news? I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, the Sora app will train us all to understand that it's all fake and it's all synthetic and don't believe any of it unless you look it up and verify it.
As a matter of fact, we're actually AI avatars created by a Belgian company.
Oh, hello there, little one. What are you? I just swept the porch.